Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome back to Projections, where this week we're going to talk about virtual reality games.
Being superheroes in virtual reality.
Yes, just released this week. We've been playing it in a review build, Marvel Heroes United VR.
Yes,
it's a mouthful.
Exactly. It's a lot of superheroes too. So this is really a brawler. This is a continuation of the classic arcade brawler, like your X-Men games, your Simpsons. Sort of like an evolution of the whole Gauntlet playstyle.
Yeah.
But now it's in VR, and you play the same way. You get 3 of your friends together, you go onto an online space, and you battle it out against a bunch of bad guys. And that's what you do. You battle, battle, battle. You battle through the soft bosses, you battle through the hard bosses, and then you win some loot at the end.
So this is an Oculus Studio produced game, funded by Oculus. It's on the Rift only, and developed by Sanzaru Games. They're the folks who made the VR Sports Challenge.
Yeah, Ripcoil too, I think.
Yep, and we first played this a year ago, was when they first announced it.
It was quite different then.
Very different.
Like it was sort of linear, where you were progressing through a tunnel and you were going for, to a checkpoint.
Yes, yeah.
Totally different now. Now it's big spaces. It's 10 different worlds that you can play in, and they're all basically the same kind of geometry. There's maybe 3 levels to them, and it's an open space. There's not a progression through any kind of checkpoint system.
And in those worlds, you, along with 3 other people, have to just fight for points. The objectives are very simple. You're defending some beacons, you are moving some energy cubes into a generator, and while you're doing that, you have the factions of AIM or Hydra or the Kree and Ultron's minions come at you, and you're just surviving.
That's right. Yeah, but that's randomized. Like, so they say you don't know what factions will show up, you don't know what bad guys, you don't know what bosses will show up until it just happens randomly in the match. And there's supposed to be an AI that sort of tempers the difficulty based on how well your group is doing, which is cool. But I found that it was relatively straightforward gameplay.
Yeah,
every round we
simple.
played was, battle it out, fight the bad guys, to protect the nodes that Norm was saying, get the batteries, charge it up, and basically try to survive. And you have to, for instance, when the bad guys come, when the bosses come, they all have like an area effect, evil thing that they can do, and you have to get out of that range, that radius, and then once they use their weapon, go back in, and you find the gameplay loop that is basically what you play every single time. And then the reward are unlocks.
Yeah, and really the big appeal for this game is the promise of becoming the Marvel comic superhero. These are based on the comic books, not necessarily the films.
Exactly.
That you know and love. And everyone has imagined what it would be like to be Spider-Man or be Wolverine or be Captain America. And this game, to some extent, allows you to live out that fantasy. Now, I think it's more about setting your expectations straight, because the first time I jumped into it, when they had us over, was you play as Captain America in the prologue, and the first thing I want to do is throw the shield. And I threw the shield the way I imagine Captain America would have thrown the shield.
How's that?
Like
right,
that.
Right.
And it flew completely in a different direction.
Right.
So I quickly realized the simulation aspects of this game were maybe toned down, and you have to trust more in auto-aim and just learning the flick maneuver that's going to get the shield to lock onto the enemy that you want to hit.
Right, so for all of the 18 good guys that you can play as, the heroes, they all have different weapon sets. And some of them are throwing objects, some of them are shooting guns, some are just using their magic powers.
Yep.
And for the most part, you have to do what the superhero would do in the movies. So for instance, as Doctor Strange, you hold your hands out and you can fire quickly to make these bursts come out, or you hold them down to get a charged burst that shoots out. But if you hold them down and bring your hands together, you create a wider, like this cool, whole new weapon. And then you do this movement and all these missiles fly out. So there is an embodiment factor. As the Hulk, you're smashing the ground and you're clapping your hands together. So they try to embody, where possible, the physicality of the superhero. And that creates what you were saying, which is you get to embody that character to some degree.
With a little bit of crutches. Like Spider-Man, you're not actually web singing, right? You're pressing the A button that teleports you onto a podium, onto a platform, and yeah, you are jumping and you can traversing the world is really simple. But at a point where you're twisting your hands around and pressing the grip button, you look like you're Spider-Man with a Spider-Man web pose.
And you can grab objects from afar, you web sling them, and
them.
if you pull them, they come to your hand.
Sure. Yeah, so you get a little bit of that feeling, and the more you lean into the embodiment, the more fun you have. The more you play into the ability. Even if the game doesn't need it, the more you like pose like your favorite hero and even communicate with your teammates like your hero, the more fun we had in those roles.
Yes. What was the character you played as that's quiet?
Black Bolt.
So that's a character I'm not familiar with. There's a lot of Marvel characters in here who have not been featured in movies, and if you're not a comic book fan, there might be some new ones to you. This was, to me, this is a quiet character. Norm role played the entire game.
Very quietly.
Not talking. It's quite funny. So if you're willing to take that leap and play with some people who are having some fun, it's a really good time. I think that there's a lot of value in having so many characters to explore. Not just the role-playing aspect, but the actual way that they fight. Because some of them are melee fighters like the Hulk or Black Panther. Or some of them are certainly distance fighters like Rocket. You wouldn't want to get too close to the bad guys as him. So finding your strength as a player and which character suits you the best, there's so much to explore with 18 characters to find what's right for you, that alone is the value of the game, and I think it's pretty strong.
And finding what's right for you also means doing well, because as much as you're cooperating to survive the mission, to beat all the enemies, to protect the checkpoints and defeat the bosses, you're also competing against each other for points.
Right.
They really want to make this like those old school arcade brawlers where at the end, yeah, everyone gets to the end of the level, but it's about who got the highest score.
Right.
And so as we were playing, we quickly found that we were cooperating. We were saving each other, rescuing each other, watching each other's backs, trying to get combos by combining the different abilities, but we also each wanted to get that high score.
Talking to the devs, they were talking about you would have your teammates throw some of these battery packs into the contraption, and you would intercept it if you wanted the points yourself and throw it in there. Or if your teammate's about to die, maybe let him die and then go and revive him, because there's a lot of points in the revival system.
So that's like the meta aspect of the game, which I think I enjoyed that part more than I did the role playing, because at some point the enemies, they're kind of stupid. The AI pops up in the same place every time. I'm shooting the same four corners. And really, I like the competitive aspect.
I gotta say, the graphics are pretty good. Not necessarily all the graphics, but the effects of your combat skills, of your abilities, are all really solid. I was really surprised by how good that is. And several of the environments look really good. The New York in particular looks really good. And so there's certainly some production value that is over what we've seen so far from almost any virtual reality title. I mean, there certainly Echo Arena and Lone Echo, those are favorites of mine, but in a very different way. This is a much bigger game. It requires like over 50 gigabytes of disk space. And I think it was probably a big budget game because the license alone would have cost quite a lot of money.
I think Echo Arena is a good comparison because it's almost like the polar opposite, where Echo Arena, only one class, it's really about skill, where you have to practice and practice and practice to get really good at it, where physics simulations are essential to the gameplay. Here, you can just put the headset on, jump right in, and go fire your blasters as Deadpool or Rocket Raccoon and have a fun seeing the visual effects.
Exactly. It is a fireworks show. There is auto aim for sure. And in fact, that's one thing I didn't like about Hawkeye. As you jump in there, bow and arrow, we know from the beginning of virtual reality that this works really well. You can actually aim and combat and do a good job of simulating that experience.
And I know the devs have a lot of balance to work in this game with so many characters. I'm curious, after this game comes out, if people or players are going to gravitate towards certain characters that they think are going to be easiest to get the highest score. Because you can play with 4 Hulks all together at once, and you can change your characters mid-game. Or are the characters balanced enough that you're going to see a diverse selection of these team-ups? Because with 18 and only 4 players at a time, it's a lot of different combination opportunities.
Yeah, I would love to see player versus player combat. I could also imagine that was never even on the table as far as Marvel was concerned, because they're very protective of their IP. So, who knows if that will ever come. They have said they will be revealing more free DLC heroes. Iron Man is strangely absent from this game. I would love to see that. But, it's a game that will continue to grow over time.
And for me, I hope that the developers get to iterate on the powers of these characters. I'd like to keep some of the same characters and really encourage players to embody, use that IK. If you see full body, right? If I'm Wolverine, have some downtime. Let me build up by having the claws. Just walk around feeling like I'm Wolverine and not just button mash.
But I got that. I got that feeling, especially from Hulk. I was giggling at one point when I launched
Hulk never giggles.
Hopefully you didn't hear me, but I was giggling. All the characters can build up a superpower, and if you kill enough bad guys, and Hulk's superpower is just like to go crazy, which is what you would expect. I think they took some cues from Overwatch because this is the same kind of deal with the gorilla in that game, where his superpower is to kind of go nuts. And they also do the loot system, which is a lot from similar to Overwatch.
Yep, unlockables, costumes, things in the home base. But we've dove into it for about a week. I'm going to go back and play more.
Yeah, it is a brawler. Like there's not a whole lot to it. You're going in there, you're fighting, and if you like that gameplay loop, you'll go back to get more unlocks.
Yeah, whole lot of fun, whole lot of game there. On the other side, we also want to talk about some games for this device right here.
So the Oculus Go has been out for 2 months now. There isn't yet a killer app for it, at least from the game side. And we said from the beginning,
media consumption.
This is about media consumption. This is about Netflix. It's about watching movies on the go, getting some privacy in a hotel room with other people. But there are certainly games on it, and I wanted to share a couple that I've been enjoying because I feel like it's not getting a whole lot of attention. Number one is The Well. Now, this is the Oculus Studios game that came out for Gear VR a while ago. Of course, this is the benefit for iPhone users, as we didn't get the experience the Gear VR library. Now we can. The Well is a turn-based RPG in the style of Wizardry or Bard's Tale or ultimate old-school turn-based three-character party RPG. You're walking through a forest. You're having random encounters with enemies. You're casting spells and defensive, and you're assembling your party based on their abilities. And it just scratches that itch. You level up, you're getting your spells to improve, you're finding secrets, you're going to villages and getting new party members. And it's a game that you can just go back to for that gameplay loop. The graphics feel like it's a small team, but they did a lot with what they had.
And I think that's one of the benefits of the Gear VR games being ported over to Oculus Go. The limitations of mobile-based computing really encourage developers to find creative ways to make their games look good. And what they've done with the sprites here, what they've done with the visual effects, for the silhouetting of enemies with portal effects behind them, really makes use of stereoscopic 3D, and that really makes up for the lack of some texture resolution detail or just geometry.
Yeah. Another game that actually is much more recent, just came out about a week ago, is called Gnog.
G-N-O-G.
It's actually produced by Double Fine here in San Francisco. I think it's developed by Co-op. And this is an interesting game that was actually, I believe it launched first on the iPhone, on iOS. And it's a puzzle game. But it's a puzzle game with an aesthetic that is so friendly and vibrant. Psychedelic is a word you could use to describe this game. When you start it up, there are 9 different puzzles, and there's only one that's unlocked. And so you have to unlock that, and then you can play the ones next to it. Eventually, you wrap all the way around, and they increase in difficulty. And each one is its own little world. It's like a puzzle box where you can interact with dials and knobs and buttons, and you have to discover how to open it. And then there's this sort of a story for each one. For instance, there's a spaceship, and the spaceship breaks down. And so you have to open the spaceship, and then you have to assist the astronauts in fixing their craft and then flying it. And all of these things reveal themselves in interesting ways. Nothing's obvious, but there's a process of discovery which is satisfying.
And so you want to have a puzzle game, the aha moment.
Exactly. There's always a moment of, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And then, particularly with the harder ones, that might stick. And then you have to quit and then come back to it later. And almost consistently, as soon as you come back to it, you say, oh, why didn't I notice that the first time? And that's a satisfactory puzzle game to me. Which
is perfect as a lean back, sitting VR experience.
Yeah.
The things that bugged me about this game, visually I loved it, and the puzzle satisfying, but because you don't have lateral movement, because it's just 3 degrees of movement, I wanted to get up close to it. And this is a game that would really benefit if I could get up close to the puzzle box.
It's on the Rift, so if you want that, you can certainly do that on the Oculus Rift.
Same with the controller. I wanted to be able to move my controller around. Only having rotational movement, I think, was a limiting factor.
That is going to be hampering for this device going forward. It's it's the cost of having it at $200. Is you get a 3 degree of freedom controller.
But if you are playing games on your Oculus Go and you have a recommendation for us, send it over. You can always post a comment in the comment section below. And if you're playing Marvel Heroes United VR, you can find us on the servers this weekend. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.